I think there's a balance between using AI as a full-time tool and obviously just using it as a tool in your toolkit. And I think that the majority of people are going to be using AI as a tool in the toolkit, not just necessarily using it as a full-time, this is the only thing to use kind of product, because realistically, you still want to have some kind of input in the creative process, and photographers and cinematographers are going to want to put their stamp on it, whether that's through the lighting or the creative angles and use cases there. But being able to use AI in a way that doesn't make them feel threatened can help just make them feel more secure in their job.
What's new in filmmaking technology this week? News, reviews, education, insights, opinions, and ideas from the CineD newsroom with Mino Leitner and Johnny Bahiri. This is Focus Check, the weekly Cinetech podcast.
Welcome to episode 79 of CineD Focus Check podcast. It is my pleasure to welcome Drew Geraci all the way from Washington, D.C. How are you, Drew?
I'm doing great, Nino. How are you?
I'm doing well indeed, too. So I think you've never been on the podcast. We've had video interviews with you before. But just, I'll give a brief introduction. Actually, you can introduce yourself, I think.
Yeah, introduce myself. Yeah, why not? So I'm a second unit DP. I basically have been doing this for the last 15 years or so, and most well known for my work in time-lapse photography. If you've seen House of Cards, the intro to that, West Side Story, Nope, Bardo, and tons of other things on HBO, Netflix, all that fun stuff. But I've been doing that for like the last 15 years and have really been enjoying what I've been doing. And I would say in the last 3 years, things have changed completely in our industry, as we're going to talk about today. So, I'm an avid cinematographer, photographer based in Washington, D.C. I'm a former naval combat photographer as well. I did that for 10 years and a journalist, and then doing what I do now at District 7 Media. So it's always a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm really happy to be on the podcast for the first time. It's great.
You're best known probably internationally for your time-lapse cinematography. We also have a workshop that you did for MZed before, a cinematic time-lapse, which is still available on MZed.com. Very popular course. So I can recommend if you're into time-lapse cinematography.
I recommend that course as well. I know the author very well.
But yeah, I mean, we're not here to talk about time-lapse today. We're here to talk about the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is generative video. Now, this is highly controversial in our industry. I mean, we are, and our audience are, filmmaking professionals, and a lot of people right now feel very threatened by what's happening with, generative AI in general, but specifically generative video. There is this whole notion of, all those models being trained on a lot of stolen data, because a lot of the companies actually trained their models on basically everything that's available on the internet without asking us really for permission. Yeah. Even if they did, we probably didn't notice.
You probably didn't notice. You probably signed your life away, and it's out there already.
Exactly, because terms and conditions of YouTube. Who reads that, right? But there seems to be this huge shift going on where we already see a combination of factors. I mean, our industry is highly under pressure right now. We know with the aftermath of the strikes in the US, they have really impacted Hollywood, and they also kind of ended the streaming wars in a sense that this overproduction that happened, I would say up until, 2021, 22 is over. And
22,
now there is the level of production has come down. It's still high, but it's come down to something that it was before COVID, I would say. And a lot of people are trying to find different ways of producing stuff. So AI comes at that moment where it's almost like, it feels like we are just ahead of that curve. I don't think most people actually realize what's, about to happen to our industry, unfortunately.
Right.
Now, what's your position on that? And where do you see yourself in the industry right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think where we are in the industry right now is it's a hodgepodge of like hybrid hey, AI is okay, and then AI is going to be the devil and destroy the entire industry. And you're kind of going back and forth there. And I think there's a lot of photographers and cinematographers that are hesitant to use AI because I think a lot of people think that it's going to detract or take away from the authenticity of what comes with live action capturing, whether it's through photo or video. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. And I think we have to look at this and frame it in a way where AI helps amplify the work that we do and gives us a larger speaker box, honestly, to tell our stories, especially those individuals that have lower budget productions or just don't have the means to produce the way, $100 million film set does. So I think AI kind of levels the playing field in a lot of ways, but it also gives a lot of leeway to do incredible things that you never could do before. And I think that's where there's an exciting kind of tantalizing aspect to AI because you can literally create anything you want. And then there's the side of it, well, it's also eliminating jobs possibly, and it's reducing budgets for large productions. But there has to be a middle ground where you can come together and say, hey, we can use AI responsibly, ethically, and for reasons that help elevate and tell stories, and not eliminate the cinematographers and photographers in the.
I heard somebody say
meantime.
the other day that there's always a bulldozer headed for you. You just have to be ready to jump on it and kind of, like stir in the right direction, not to get run over by it. And I think that seems to be one of those cases, right? But I mean, in general, even if this, assuming that this thing will take off and replace a lot of existing production, it will most likely mean that there will be less jobs in the industry, right?
I think ultimately, yeah, it's going to lead to less jobs, but I think it's also going to lead to more opportunities for producers that want to go the extra mile, take that initiative, and start doing kind of standalone storytelling, where you're a one-person crew going out there, or maybe not even one person, let's say 2 or 3 people, to go out there, create the content that you want, and create something that can be impactful and also be a brand new career path, quite honestly. And one of the things that we talk about is the fact that 3 years ago, prompt engineers, AI developers, and AI directors, they didn't exist. And now in 2025, those job titles do exist, and we're going to see more of those job titles popping up, which I think it's just going to switch a lot of people over that maybe weren't doing what they wanted to do in the film industry, perhaps. Like maybe they were stuck as being an AC or a grip or something, and they wanted to elevate to something else, but maybe they didn't have the opportunities to do that. I think AI is going to give a lot of those people the creative springboard to maybe go out and try those things and then go do it out in the real world afterwards when they're able to kind of show and articulate what they can do in the virtual world right now. But I think that there's a lot of different aspects to why AI is positive, but also I can see that it can detract from working day.
I'm sure you
people.
got into filmmaking because something excited you about getting behind the lens, getting behind the camera, and filming real life. Where do you? Well, first of all, what was that? What
Yeah.
was it that actually excited you to get into filmmaking in the first place? And do you think this is something that can be kind of transferred into this upcoming AI age where you probably are just,
Hmm.
filming a reference image or something like that, or even taking a photo of something, then animating it
Right.
through a prompt?
Yeah, for me personally, when I first got involved with storytelling, I was in the Navy as a young 18-year-old and really just enjoyed telling stories and being able to go out there with your camera, capture the moment, be in the moment as it's happening. It's a thrill, it's a rush, and it's one of those things that you don't obviously get with AI and technology where it's just text based. So being out in the field, having the air rush over you as you're at a rocket launch or something, you get to feel those environments, and that's obviously the difference between shooting live action in person versus sitting at your desk and typing away a prompt or taking a photograph that you've taken already, and then manipulating that in AI. But honestly, I think that that's the future, and I think that we have to look at this from the perspective of, well, social media is one of the largest markets right now. People are out there advertising on a daily basis, and I think AI has a huge imprint on that and can be leveraged in a way, when used ethically, to create really great marketing material and content, for relatively cheap. Um, and then at the same time, it gives you the ability to expand your marketplace in
You're
your
already
business.
getting some jobs for, we're going to dive into the tools in a second, but you're already getting some jobs with
Yeah,
generative AI, right? Because you're starting to build knowledge in this field and really have been
right.
really early with this. Where do you think already? I mean, what kind of area do your clients come from? Is this more commercial, or in general, what are the kind of areas that you see most affected by generative AI video?
So, thankfully, I think generative AI is kind of still on that lower level tier where you're talking about just kind of like marketing campaign videos for small businesses, boutique businesses. And I think that's where it's going to settle and stay for the next couple of years until it actually hits the higher end production market. Because right now, a lot of the AI and generative AI out there doesn't have the resolution or capability to really be production ready. There's ways that you can make it production ready and implement it into scenes and different types of VFX and CGI and whatnot. But ultimately, I don't think generative AI is ready for the big screen. But we are seeing it being used in, look at The Mandalorian. They did deep fakes and AIs with Mark Hamill and his face there. So it's being used in the industry now. But for what we want to use in the context that if you're just starting out in AI, think of it as like as property managers or people that are selling properties. You can then take still images that maybe you took on site, animate those still images, retain a higher profit or margin of profit from selling that to the different realtor brokers, and then basically using it as marketing campaigns in the future. But I think that we will see larger jumps in AI probably in
When
the
you
next 2
think
to 3
back about your
years.
first encounters with generative video, what was your first reaction? And I mean, is this, like, what did you feel threatened, or did you see it as an opportunity?
No, honestly, the first time I did it, and this is, I guess, last year, when the original Runway ML came out, I started using their Gen 1, and I threw a picture of my Jeep in there, and I said, all right, I'm going to animate this so the Jeep drives to the left, and, light comes down streaming from the sky or something like that. And I saw it and it rendered it, and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And the realism and the way that it was able to actually capture the movement, and it knew the movement that I wanted and animated the areas that I wanted. It was a kind of like an aha moment, because you're looking at this not necessarily as something that's going to replace cinematography, but as a tool to say, hey, this would be great for pre-visualization of products that I want to use. Like if I want to take a model or a scene and set it up virtually, I can do that now, and I can use real live assets to create that. And once you see that, your head just starts, like turning. And you're like, okay, I can start using it for this, this, and this, and then marketing it for this, this, and this. And you really just see the whole future of what the possibilities are with AI to help just enhance the work that you're already doing. And I think that's one of the big takeaways that I looked at is this isn't going to replace me. This is just going to help be a better tool in my
Yeah, so I
toolkit.
mean, we talked about this a little bit before this call, that basically when you look at this space right now, it seems like a lot of people who are really vocal about it and experimenting and actually getting some great results are not necessarily filmmakers that come from our industry, right? They're
Right.
probably creative, some from
Yeah.
some other fields that just suddenly maybe never or rarely use the camera, at least not professionally, but suddenly
Sure.
stumble into this space and see the possibilities. There seems, like we said before, a lot of people are very hesitant about this who are established in the industry because they feel threatened. Now, when you saw that,
Yeah.
what made you decide to go full in the sense that, like, I mean, there is push. We talked about the pushback already, but there is a lot of people who are almost aggressive against it. Every time we report about anything AI
Yeah.
related, it feels like we are, like it's almost like I go to the cemetery and just dig out a corpse or something. I mean, the
Right.
reactions are hostile. How do you feel? Do you get that same reaction from some of your peers who you've worked with before, or I don't know?
Yeah, well, let's just say I've gotten that feedback from some mutual friends of ours. I mean, Philip Bloom called me out on it and basically said that we needed to stick to traditional photography and cinematography, and I'm with him. Like, I think people like I'm not going to say that are in the older demographic, but those that have been around the industry for a while, they do feel threatened because it could possibly take their job away, and it could give it to somebody who doesn't necessarily have the same experience or the same skill set as that person. But at the same time, it's also giving more opportunity to people across the board that couldn't get in the door in the first place. So I think there's a balance between using AI as a full-time tool and obviously just using it as a tool in your toolkit. And I think that the majority of people are going to be using AI as a tool in the toolkit, not necessarily using it as a full-time, this is the only thing to use kind of product, because realistically, you still want to have some kind of input in the creative process, and photographers and cinematographers are going to want to put their stamp on it, whether that's through the lighting or the creative angles and use cases there. But being able to use AI in a way that doesn't make them feel threatened, can help just make them feel more secure in their job. And I think once people start realizing that and understanding that it is something that can help make their craft better, maybe they'll come around and start using it for purposes to help build their business.
I just wanted to say, actually, something you just mentioned, that the fact that you're a pro filmmaker diving into this makes it special, because you know what you're talking about. And a lot of people who are getting into it, I'm not saying they don't know what they're talking about, but they don't
Right.
have the
Right.
experience. They probably don't know what a 21 millimeter lens looks like. They don't know what like
Right.
a f5.6 looks like versus something else. And I think that all the knowledge that we've accumulated over the years as cinematographers, as directors, whatever we are, or even post-production people, will inform
Right.
even that, right? Because we're going to come to the prompting a little bit later, but I think you will get better results if
Right.
you actually tell it exactly what you want, right?
Well, that's the crazy thing. Like, if you know language, if you can articulate what you want, and as a cinematographer, you know the language of cinematography because you are out there saying, okay, I want a really nice boked out background. I want to have this really beautiful volumetric lighting coming up, through the forest trees or something. You get to use language in a way that helps amplify the work that you're shooting in AI. And a lot of people that don't have that experience on set or don't have that knowledge, they're not going to have that experience when it comes to prompting. And realistically, prompting and being as descriptive as possible is what's going to separate your okay AI work with higher elevated AI work. And I think that's the magical part to that. So I think realistically, if you already have the skill set as a photographer or cinematographer, you're going to be coming into this in a much better place than someone who doesn't know the language, that doesn't know the terminology within the universe. And that's a step up too. So I think people should be excited about it. And I think there's a lot of avenues and opportunities to tell great stories and make some money in the long run as well.
The funny thing is, I think, I mean, I probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is probably not like a pivot in your career. It's more like an addition to your toolkit, right? It's not something.
Yeah, this is just an addition. I wouldn't say like I'm going full AI into it, like, oh, I'm only going to use AI from here on out. But what I will say is I've had at least 5 companies reach out and say, hey, we love the work that you did on the previous projects. Why don't you try doing it with AI, because our budgets aren't as big? And I did 2 or 3 projects for them doing that, and they were absolutely blown away with the results and keeping everything in line with the budget. And I think that that's the exciting part to it, is you just get to see all of these new aspects that come from using new technology.
Well, to be fair, I think time lapse is probably, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the areas that will be heavily affected by AI video, right? Because it takes a lot of time to make
100%.
a proper time lapse,
100%.
a lot of effort. I mean, I saw what you posted, what you did in the Swiss Alps. I mean, it's crazy, like in
Yeah.
freezing temperatures, spending the nights there. I mean, these are
Right.
things that can be relatively easily created by a computer, I guess now, which is, or at least like imagined, and you don't have any subject in them, right? There's not that
Right.
the dead
Yeah.
giveaway very often still with AI generated video is as soon as you see a human, right? So I think it makes
Right.
total sense for you to add this to your toolkit. Yeah, so let's actually dive into the technology a little bit more. So
Let's do it.
it's very hard to keep track. Actually, we first of all, I want to point out that like we're working together with you on an MZed course, which is really diving into all those
Right.
tools. And the whole idea is to actually highlight what's there and how it is evolving. So as you're teaching this, you will keep updating the course. So it's actually, people can be
Right.
sure if they take the course, if they are subscribed to MZed, they will always get the latest version. And like we'll do our best to include everything that is relevant.
Yeah, we'll do our best. There's so much out there. That's the hard part about AI is like there's just not one tool. There's 100 different tools, and each one does something slightly different, slightly better, or slightly worse, one of the two. But it's the exciting part as well because the technology literally evolves overnight, and you could have one model come out one month, and then there's another model the next month. So this is always changing. It's always evolving, and that's kind of the exciting part about it. And when through this course, the idea is to hopefully update that as it's happening, as the change is happening, but in a way, hopefully that gets people excited and entices them to see more and more
So, what
as it evolves.
AI video platforms have impressed you the most so far? And what do you like? What's your typical kind of workflow right now?
All right, so I'm subscribed to 8 different platforms, but really the top two that come out to me is Flow with Google. They're amazing with VO3, and then you've also got Runway ML that just introduced ALF that allows you to do multiple angles from one clip, and you combine those two together, and you can really create honestly full sequenced shots, or even like pre-visualization shots that really work well. And you can combine those two in post-production to create a nice sequence of events. And I think that that is probably the future and probably the best bang for your buck. Not a sponsored post. Definitely don't work for Google or for Runway, but they are great programs. But I think a lot of people also don't know the cost that is associated with these different types of platforms. And that's something that you definitely want to understand and address, because if you take a look at Flow with VO3, if you buy the Ultra edition, it's $250 a month. And that gets you, I think, 2,500 credits or 25,000 credits now. But every generation you do is a different credit. So if you do 4 iterations of like a VO3, you're looking at close to 400 credits, which is, $5 or $6 right there instantly that you're using just to generate one image. But realistically, those 2 video editors are the best that I've seen right now. And they do the best job of upscaling when you use something like Topaz's Labs AI video that allows you to upscale to like 4K or even higher than that. But that's kind of the exciting part is you can do so much with AI, and there's so many tools for AI that you can really create very vibrant, very realistic scenes in just a matter of seconds.
How do you think? I mean, there's this random. I've used Midjourney quite a lot in the past, and some other image generators,
Yeah,
and there's always this randomness element to it, which is exciting. But it's also, if you use it in a professional context, it's kind of annoying because like it's very hard to define
yeah,
to know exactly what you'll get, and you shouldn't know exactly what you'll get, but you should be pretty close, right?
right.
What do you think? I mean, do you feel comfortable in a way that if you have an idea for a shot and you prompt it either based on a real image that you took or just, like out of thin air, basically, how confident are you that you're
Yeah.
actually going to get what you want relatively soon?
So quite honestly, we can go through some of these examples too. I would say you get like a 97% accurate video right off the bat, just from let's just say a blank prompt. So if you're able to articulate exactly what your subject is, the context of it, and some of the modifiers that you would want to see in the scene, even if you just do like the 3 basics, you'll get a pretty good rendition of what comes out. And I think that's kind of the exciting part about it. But I do know that when you use reference frames, and that's something that I really enjoy using, where you combine different types of ingredients to create one overall frame, you get better results with that because you're actually showing and expressing to the algorithm what you want to see, and you're using visuals to do that. And I would say a good 95% of the time, it looks exactly like you want it to. So
Should we dive into some of the examples you sent?
let's dive into some of the examples. So, if you want to open up, we'll start with the geodomes because it's one of the projects I'm working on right now is for this geodome company. Um, and while you're doing that, I'll do a little backstory. So we went out and basically shot a bunch of these geodomes just as reference materials, and I'm using these shots to set up for the AI. And what I've done is I've gone into Google Flow and I've used those as my main subject. So I'll put that as maybe 2 or 3 of them as my first 2 subjects, and then I'll have a background plate for my background subject. And when we're able to put those together, you tell Google Flow exactly what you want to see. In this case, I do a lot of like aerial type shots. So I'll say, aerial orbit the geodomes in a rustic mountain setting with snow capped mountains, blah, 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 blah. And you see the results and you're like, that's pretty damn good. It's exactly what I was looking for.
So that was a still image that you fed into the system, or?
Yeah. So
Okay.
those are 3 still images.
So where do you think,
Yeah.
if you look at that, like if somebody saw that, you probably wouldn't realize it's not an actual drone shot. So,
Well, and that's the thing. There's so like it's so good, and I think once the resolution gets to the point where you're above 1080p, it's going to be indistinguishable. There's another geodome shot that I really like that I used where I combined a shot that was from Arizona and then I combined it with a shot that I shot in California, and the two merged beautifully. And it gives you this really beautiful glowing path with light beaming down as if it's an aerial shot. Their cars driving up to the geodome. It looks so real. None of it happened. Like the assets are real, but none of the motion, none of the ingredients, or none of um the movements actually were there. So that's kind of like the brilliance about it, is you can create anything you want from just
very
having
cool.
reference photos.
So what else do we have here?
Yeah, so kind of down the same lane, let's say you want to create like a sequencing shot. If so for the dancing, one of my friends, Michaela, is a yoga instructor, and I had a couple photos of her just in different poses, dancing and whatnot. But I used her as the model for this particular video, and I basically just wanted the scene as being an infinity pool that goes off into the distance with like a nice evening glow sunset, something to that nature. So it kind of silhouetted her against the backdrop, but there was reflections in the foreground. And then I told her to do 2 shots. I told her to do a wide shot of her dancing and then a close up of her like legs and feet where the water would be. And I got to say, it does a pretty good job with the water, the way that it moves, the way that um, the ruffles on like the top of the water move with her feet. It looks so realistic, and you can easily create these 2 sequences just off of one reference image.
So the reference image was the wide shot.
Yeah.
So the first video dancing one, that is basically, you didn't film that, right? That was just a still image that you fed in.
No, that's just a still image. Well, no, I shouldn't even say she is a still image. The entire atmosphere was just concocted out of thin air. And then I dictated what the movements were, and then I dictated what the secondary shot was. So you can create a really nice 3-shot sequence if you wanted to, by going boom, wide, boom, tight legs, boom, medium shot. She turns towards the camera. But you can do that in a matter of seconds off of just one still frame,
And the
which is pretty
close-ups,
amazing.
that was done with Aleph, or how?
No, that was also done in Flow. So there's still a lot of options now with the new runway tool. I will say that it works better than VO3, but I think VO3's quality in terms of how it renders is far better than what Runways is. So once those 2 merge together, maybe we'll get that perfect kind of angle enhancer.
So basically, it was a still photo of her just in front of a different background, and you just told it to generate the background in the sunset. Okay, cool. Wow. Okay, impressive. I thought you actually fed it an actual still of her in front of that sunset and just told it to animate it.
No, that's what's crazy. So, and then some of the other examples was, and this is where I think this is going to be used a lot in, is just kind of like second unit scenics, where you're going out there. So I had some photos from Oregon that I had taken, as well as California. There's a really beautiful pathway that I wanted to show, so I used that as like the first scene, and then it cuts to a scene of a giant waterfall, and then I added in an aerial rise. So it took all that information, put it in as if it were an aerial shot, and then the drone takes off and then follows up the waterfall, and it looks pretty realistic. There's obviously some artifacting that happens when you do these types of things, but you generate 2 or 3 iterations and you find one that looks pretty damn good. And I think the next one that I think is going to interest a lot of people is, and this again, we'll go back to having consent and authorship and all that other stuff, because it's important. You want to make sure that if you are putting anybody in AI, that you have their consent and you have their authorization to use their image. So in this instance, I actually just use my face for this. But if you go to the human replacement clip, so what I started off was with a base clip that I didn't use any type of ingredients. I just wanted the prompt to kind of create its own world atmosphere with a person. But then in the second and third video, I go ahead and implement my face on that character and then move it through a scene. So what you'll see in the first scene is a guy that kind of looks like me, but I just kind of described my features. And then in the second one, I actually used a reference photo of myself, pretty much in this exact same outfit, and then created a live animation of that. And then I added a secondary animation where I hold up my cat afterwards. So just to kind of like show you the randomness that you can add to a scene. But
Yeah,
it's pretty
we're
interesting,
just
right?
looking at them
They
now.
even
It's
get some like
crazy.
the camera movement down.
The AI doesn't like you smiling though.
It doesn't like me smiling. It only wants to do grins.
Okay, interesting.
uh,
Yeah, yeah. It's
and then I
well.
think the
The
other
other thing I
one,
have is
yeah,
actually I see it only now, the scene integration with the domes, because I only showed the first one. Yeah.
yeah, with the dome. So yeah, so if you choose either of those, like the first one, so that's a scene that I had actually shot out in Montana or actually Wyoming, and then combine that with the just a still image of the geodomes, and then it said, "Hey, I want to replicate this geodome 3 times. I want a fire pit out in the front, and I want a truck parked outside, and then it's going to be an orbiting aerial shot with sweeping mountains in the background and cascading gold light." On the forest, and it literally gave me exactly that, and it used all of my images that I had as references. The only thing that the AI generated in that image was the fire pit and the car, so neither of those were real. But all of the other elements with the geodomes, those are legit. Those look exactly like one for one with what we shot, and then the background is a one for one with replicated kind of background shots. But
Well, yeah.
it's
What do
pretty
you think
interesting.
about character consistency in general? I think I find that with a few experiments that I've been doing is that sometimes somebody might look similar to somebody, but it's not actually the person. Is that better with VO3 or?
It's not good with any of them, quite honestly. I mean, replication or like the consistency with people is very difficult, and which is why I think that if you do like scene changes, you need to have a reference shot for every scene that you shoot. That way, if you want to have a person start off as a profile and then go into a head-on, you should have both of those in there so that you maintain the shape. Because even if we would go back to the example of myself being implemented in there, my nose is a little more crooked than what my nose is in there, and that's what throws it off from the realism of keeping a consistent character. So I think we're still a ways away from creating characters that can be replicated in multiple scenes with the consistency that they look. But I would say in the next year or so, that'll be fixed. Because even between VO1 and VO3, the character creation is just insane. The amount of detail, the amount of information that you see just from VO1 to VO3, it's nuts. And I can't imagine what the next iteration is going to be, because I think we're going to be getting more fluid movement so that you can actually have more articulable range of motion with characters' arms, and even do like character placement within the scene. There's a couple that do that right now, where you're able to actually change the lighting in the scene, completely move the character. And I think that'll be a whole new ball game once you can do that consistently. It's gonna change everything for marketing,
So,
honestly.
how do you actually evaluate from all those tools that are out there what is just hype and what is actually usable? Or is it a little bit too early to tell? And do you think that a lot of the tools that are might be just hype now, they might be actually usable tomorrow?
So that's a great question. It's kind of a crapshoot. There's so many different editors out there, and a lot of them use the same API. So a lot of them are just calling up VO3 to their own platform, which is kind of funny. So they're using the same data sets and running the same algorithms. But you look at what Sora's doing, what Google's doing, and like Runway and even Midjourney now, because Midjourney has now evolved from being photo to doing video too. Um, they're all similar, but I think it comes down to what the UI is, the usability of it, and just the ease of use to create things. That's going to be setting people apart. Um, I think Flow, to a degree, is a little overhyped just because it's the most expensive one out there, but it does produce the best quality. But I think that if you take a look at Halio, or even like Kling AI, you can use their video generators. If you're just using still images as references, the output is really incredible. So I think if you're looking at creating something from scratch without any references, Flow is better. But Halio and Midjourney and those types do a really great job of animating still images for a much cheaper per credit price.
To me, one of the things that's really weird about the generative AI revolution, whatever, is the fact that
Yeah.
everything is kind of still based around text prompts. It doesn't matter if you want to generate text, you want to generate music, you want to generate any kind of video or images. It's always text. And it feels like such a weird thing, right? It's not like, it, it's very,
It feels
exactly. It's
rudimentary.
like,
Like it feels you're just like, I want more buttons. I want to click things. I want to like have more control and customization. And that doesn't exist yet. And I think that that'll be the next evolution, is creating a UI that
yeah,
has that
one of the
ability.
weirdest things I read was that Google developers, like Vue developers, discovered that you can draw onto images and tell it what to do and what to change. And it's like, what?
Mm.
Why did you develop it? Why did you discover that you can just draw on it? And
Yeah, how did you
it
discover
sometimes
something?
feels like with the whole AI thing that they putting these billions behind the compute, so actually the results get better, but very
Yeah.
often they don't know what's happening, and then they don't know why it's happening. That's the feeling I get. I might be wrong here, but yeah, I hope that the tools will be more flexible. You will be actually able to draw on things more, which is already we're starting to see this now. But I think that it's
Yeah.
very rudimentary, like you said. I mean, you can't describe everything in text, right? It's very difficult. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
have you actually used some workarounds where I've seen some people actually feed an image into ChatGPT and like a still image, and then tell ChatGPT to actually generate like a description of that image, and then take that description
Correct.
into a different tool in order to animate it?
See, you're already thinking like a prompt engineer, because yeah, that's exactly what I do for a lot of my stuff. I'll be like, okay, how do I want to describe this if I were a prompt editor? So I'll go into ChatGPT, feed it the image, and say, describe this to me as if you were creating a visual or generate a video, and it'll give you the entire prompt, and you basically can just copy and paste that prompt into another generator. You're not going to get exactly the image that you want, but you'll get a pretty close rendition of that. And I think that's interesting. And I think that's how you can also utilize other AI services like ChatGPT to create templates for that. And that's one of the things that we talk about in my course is I actually have a generator that will go out there and give you all of the lines of information that you need. So you basically just fill in the blank of what my subject is, what modifiers do I want, and it makes it a much more streamlined process, because you could spend, 10 minutes writing a prompt if you really wanted to get really in depth, and then you're waiting, but then it just becomes a slog of you waiting to, first having it render, but then taking the time to write the prompt and then rewrite the prompt to get what you want. So if you create templates ahead of time and you're able to just kind of plug and play, it makes the whole process of generating much smoother and much easier across the
Cool.
board for anybody.
So from the current point where we are and the kind of jobs that people are working on right now, I'm not talking about what's happening in half a year or a year from now or even further than that. Can you
Sure.
walk us through a real world workflow where AI might complement traditional cinematography on one of your productions?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the productions that we're working on, which was specifically for AI, and I'll go back to it and reference it, which is this Geodome project, is where we had 2 days to go out and film and scout, and we did shoot real cinematography, we did shoot real assets, but we had already had it in our mind that we were going to use AI, because the client, who is also in the tech industry, wants to use AI and wants to kind of showcase what the technology is. And I said, hey, let's try it out, let's see how it works. So kind of going through the same lines of what I would do for a normal production. We would do a pre-production scout. We would understand what the client wants, what the objectives are going to be, what our subjects are that we need to shoot, and what content that we need to shoot. And I shot the majority of it live action camera. It looked great. But then when we took it back to post, I was like, hey, I'm missing this, this, and this. Well, I'm able to use those assets that I shot out in the field to create real assets, merge those together in DaVinci Resolve, and it kind of creates this beautiful, seamless transition from real life to AI, back to real life, back to AI, and using it to supplement shots that we couldn't get. Because as it happened, when we were in the area filming, we had rain for the 2 days that we were there, and we literally had maybe 20 minutes of non-rain to shoot. So this is kind of another perfect example of how AI can help fix a problem, because if we had only relied on the live action stuff that we had shot, we wouldn't have been able to have completed the project in the way that the client wanted. And because we were able to leverage AI in such a way that allowed us to create bright, beautiful, sunny days that we didn't have and create environments that didn't exist at the time, it allowed them to get what they wanted, and it gave us the latitude to be more creative, and complete the project on time.
If somebody were to start in cinematography right now, what kind of area would you tell them to not go into anymore, and why? And which ones do you think are relatively safe?
Oh my god. Honestly, I think anything that's niche is safe. And as much as, I hate to like say like time lapse is a dying breed, I think time lapse is still safe. I think your aerial departments are still safe. So if you're trying to go do really beautiful landscape shots, that's a good area to get into. But understanding language and writing is where I'd probably position myself, because the more that you understand how to write and how to articulate what you want, the better you're going to be in the future. So I would say get the basics of cinematography, understand the principles of it, how to shoot, lighting, those things, but then really understand language of cinematography, how to direct to your crew the type of lighting that you want, or the type of scene setup, the camera movements. When you can articulate that to the prompt, you're going to come and walk away with something that looks absolutely magical, and something that doesn't look like it was just kind of rendered on the fly.
And how do you personally balance the respect for traditional filmmaking with, your curiosity for AI-driven workflows? I mean, where do you see this come together?
I think it's going to take people to be bold and to go out there and just do it, and not be hesitant about it, because I think that there are people that obviously are hesitant and are threatened by the use of AI. And I would say that I, I was kind of threatened by AI in the past, but after I've started using it and understanding how to leverage its power and wield it to create better stories, I can see that it is just a tool, and it's not something that's going to replace what I do as a creative. So it's just coming down to the understanding that AI isn't here to replace all the jobs. It is going to replace jobs. There's no denying that, but it's going to help create better jobs down the future, for cinematographers, quite honestly. And I think it's going to give them more leverage to do things that maybe that they had only wished they could do,
Well, I
and
feel
didn't have the
like a lot of
opportunities to.
workflows, especially on set, are still very, very much the same as they've always been, right? I mean, we're now on digital cameras, but
Sure.
we
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
still shoot the same kind of way. We have maybe sometimes autofocus and stuff like that. But in reality, I mean, we
Right.
still, sets are very often operated, especially in feature films, as they have been 100 years ago, essentially. Do you think that AI workflows will also come into sets? Because things like virtual production, which essentially is a highly, highly technical process that requires a lot of specific
Right.
equipment and trained personnel, these are also things that might be able to be done in a much more straightforward way with, on a budget with AI driven workflows like background
Sure.
replacement, especially the lighting changes on subjects that have always been an issue with, of course, green screen, blue screen,
Yeah.
which was kind of solved by virtual production. But then virtual production is a super high end, super expensive kind of thing to do. So,
Right. Yeah. Super expensive.
do you think that, like whether it's camera manufacturers implementing some type of AI, generative AI, even into their cameras at some point, that is something I want to see some more innovation in that field, because that is, I think, that could be one of the things that could save some of those traditional manufacturers, I think. But yeah.
No, I think you're 100% correct. And I was actually having a conversation with someone from a camera company about this. And I think that we will be seeing AI integrated in a way, whether it's a small bodied camera or a larger bodied camera, that has some type of generative capabilities to it, whether it's the ability to relight in camera, reposition, reframe, or even generate certain types of scenes in the camera with content that you shot. And don't quote me on this. I'll say that'll be here in the next 3 to 5 years at a minimum. And I think that's an interesting way, because it's how you're going to merge AI and traditional photography together in a way that I think would satisfy a lot of people, because it's not taking the tools away. It's just giving you another tool to use inside of that camera. Um, and I think it's pretty interesting. I think it's very exciting. I think a lot of people, who want to embrace technology and who want to keep pushing the boundaries of their creativity, they're going to have a lot of different tools popping up and hardware in the next couple of
Yeah,
years. And I
just the
think that's pretty
combination
awesome.
of that with, I mean, we now have the authenticity thing in Sony cameras, right? Which is kind of guaranteeing,
Right.
putting a
Yeah,
stamp
that's
on,
right.
oh, this is an actual image that was shot with a camera, which I think is really important, especially for documentary and news. And
Yeah,
imagine just
100%.
having this added layer of AI generative tools almost inside your camera or on an iPad next to your camera, kind of operating what's, just has been recorded, maybe even in real time, right?
Right.
You see somebody, you film some like a subject, and in real time, it would generate a background and the reflections of that background onto the subject, and then of course, not give that the stamp of approval that this is an actual real image, but that is the AI
Right.
generated
Yeah.
alteration of that image. That would make a lot of sense because then you have kind of the guarantee, quote unquote, guarantee that there is a real image in the camera, and the rest is just kind of automatically generated through
Right.
AI. So I don't know, just some ideas, but I think that's where there is a missing link for me there, where like all of that is kind of it's now 100, almost like 100% fake or 100% real, and it kind of needs to come together
Yeah.
at some point.
I mean, you're always going to have purists. You're going to have people that just don't like AI in general, want authentic images. And I get it. I understand. I'm from that camp too. I love looking at authentic imagery. Um, but I think when you responsibly can dictate and note that what you're looking at is AI and you can then check its authenticity, it gives the viewer the choice to say, "Hey, I'm either gonna watch this or I'm not gonna watch this." But I'd say 9 times out of 10, people are gonna watch it, even if it does say AI generated at the
But there's
bottom.
always, I mean, it's also
Um,
becoming almost a philosophical discussion. What is an actual real image? Because is,
sure.
something with a 2x anamorphic lens, is that, is that a
Ri
realistic representation of reality? But yeah, I mean, at least it's not changing the actual way, like, my face looks or whatever. So, it's,
Sure. Well, I mean, I think people are gonna nitpick either way on either side of the fence because nothing is real in this world because even the video we're producing here has been post-processed in some way. It's smoothed out our face. It's gotten rid of some of the wrinkles, you know? Um, it's just to what degree, I guess, that it comes in. And if people think that it's gonna take their jobs away, I
yeah.
don't know, one of the 2. But, um, technology, if you aren't embracing it now, you're gonna be left behind, and I keep saying that to a lot of people, and I've had so many people reach out just in, like, maybe the last, 3 or 4 weeks saying, "Hey, I wanna learn more about AI. Where can I, get the resources to do this? What can I do to jump into the AI marketplace?" And it's the Wild West right now, so really anybody can start utilizing these tools and start marketing themselves, and branding it in a way that hopefully will set them up for the future. And then once it settles down and the AI either becomes super mainstream and we start seeing it in major productions, or it just stays and settles somewhere in that mid-range small business area, I think it's going to be a huge explosion and in a good way for a lot of people, and just give people more opportunity to try cool, fun, creative things that they
Well,
couldn't
through
do in the
our MZed
past.
course series, with your course, like
That's right.
we're trying to make the Wild West into a more organized West, I guess. So yeah, but yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
that was a good point. But now with you having observed all those tools over the last year or so, where do you think AI video is headed within the next 2 or 3 years? Like with the advances that are being made.
Well, it's such a stark difference. If even in 1 year, if you look from VO1 to VO3, and if you look from Gen 1 runway to Gen 4 runway, the realism is what's going to be coming. The articulation of hand movements and facial features and the emotion that you get from just your subject, that's going to become more prevalent. And then we're going to start seeing render resolution increases. And once we get past that 2K resolution on rendered content, and once we can surpass 8 seconds of created video, you're going to start seeing a whole, I don't know, a cornucopia of all these different types of AIs making their way into different facets of every production, realistically. And I think AI video is only going to get stronger. It's only going to get better, faster, and more mainstream in the next year. And then in the next 3 years, I think it's going to be pretty commonplace. If you're not using it, you probably
Well, I think
should be.
I think one thing that we're gonna see is implementation into traditional tools, because right now those are separate things, and it's kind of, like you have to export a video there
Yeah,
and import it there, and then enhance resolution, and all that will probably go away. And at some point, there will be updates to DaVinci Resolve, Premiere, Final Cut. I mean, probably Adobe, is
yeah,
pretty, pushy about AI tools in general in their application. So they might be the first with this one. But I can see that generative video will go straight into the NLE. And then it's kind of like that opens the floodgates, because if, like, or
yes,
even something
100%.
like CapCut, like if they have that built in, there is no stopping it anymore, because it's going to be
No,
everywhere. I just hope that there will be legislation around that is actually forcing people to mark their stuff as AI generated.
sure.
Or, I mean, I keep saying that about Google, with them being behind VO3, it would be an easy thing for them
Yeah,
to, have a kind of database of all the content that's generated with VO3, and kind of, as soon as you upload something to YouTube, it's automatically flagged. You don't need to, tell it
sure.
to say that it's AI generated, because they should know it. I'm sure there's some privacy issues with that or whatever, but I mean, they should know, and they should tell people who are watching it that. Otherwise, it's kind of
Sure.
like, the problem is not professional filmmaking that will replace some VFX shot. The problem is really just faking stuff and then people thinking that it's real, and we see it
Right.
already
Yeah.
happening right now. It's just like,
Yeah.
you saw that video of the jumping bunnies on the trampoline. Everybody thought it's
Right. Yeah.
real, and then a week later it was like, oh,
Everybody
it's
did.
AI
That's right.
generated. It's like, what? You feel so betrayed. But that's just the beginning.
Well, that's the crazy thing about AI is like there's so many good things that it can be used for, but also a lot of bad things too. And we do have to take some kind of precaution against um, the bad things with the deep fakes and the ability to manipulate audio and facial features and what people say or think people say. So that's a whole other thing, and I hope that there are. I hope there's legislation that goes into effect across the world to prevent that from happening, or to at least put safeguards on that. But I would say everything that you said before with the NLEs, 8 to 12 or 8 to 16 months, that'll be happening. Especially for Adobe, they've already started implementing that with their, plus or minus like 2 or 3 seconds on the tail end to generate uh, a video there. And we'll see probably like a full editor where it comes out for a couple seconds, maybe 20 seconds worth of content you can create. And then Resolve is getting there too. I think everything you said is pretty accurate and will happen very soon. But I think that's the exciting part is because once it hits that NLE, it's just going to snowball into something even bigger, and it's going to be the point where it's just commonplace. It's going to every editor is going to have some kind of generative AI in it, whether you want to create titles or VFX or something. I could see that being implemented into After Effects and Fusion and all these other types of VFX editors. Um, but that's where it's headed, honestly. So I
Yeah,
don't
I
think
mean,
you're
just
far off at
imagine
all.
having two clips in your timeline, and you usually do a crossfade, and then you can just tell it, well, actually, it's two different drone shots. Or like you said, the path
Yeah,
video, you have somebody walking on the path, and then you have a flyover, and then just render the in between right in the timeline.
right.
It's going to be impossible to tell.
Yeah,
So let's just move on as the last section of this to some personal reflections and advice for people. So, what has
yeah.
surprised you most about working with AI video, which you didn't expect when you started out?
I think the flexibility in what AI has done to help both increase my workload, but also lighten my workload by being able to do a lot of the pre-visualization and the pre-production ahead of time, whether that's through like ChatGPT or Descript. So if I need to write stuff out, but then being able to see all of that content that you want to generate inside of Runway and Flow, and being able to see it live and just come to life in front of your eyes, it's incredible. And it's one of those things that every time you render something, you're just like, oh, damn, that looks pretty good. And you're like, I couldn't have done it better myself in the real world. And it's it's an exciting time. And I think that there's only more excitement to come from this, and only better things I think that can
Awesome.
evolve.
And has
quite
AI
honestly.
actually changed the way you look at your own cinematography work? Because after you started working with these tools, you probably look at stuff differently when you're behind the camera and actually filming something.
Well, absolutely. It gives me more opportunity to say, hey, this would be a great kind of, a dolly shot where the camera moves through the scene, but I can't do it because I can't get the permits for it. So I'll just take a couple different still shots and use that. But it opens up your mind to say, oh, I can go make these shots possible, even though I may not have the permission or the permits to do what I need. And that's the exciting part of this is it brings the impossible to the possible.
And what's your advice for filmmakers that feel really overwhelmed or threatened by AI?
Listen, I think people are going to feel overwhelmed and threatened by it, but at some point you have to kind of say, okay, take a step back. Let's look at this. What can this do for me? How can it help, amplify the work that I'm using or doing, and just try it out. I think a lot of people are hesitant because they don't necessarily know the technology. Maybe they're only technical based and they're not, hands on with computers. So giving them the opportunity to go out there and try the tools firsthand may be the best way to kind of get over the fear of AI and see what it can actually do to help
Awesome.
your workflow.
And well, second to last question. If you could go back to when you were starting out in filmmaking, how would you feel about the rise of AI today? Just put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's, let's say, in early 20s and just really motivated to go into filmmaking. How would you start now?
It's funny because I was actually like visualizing that when you sent me the questions, and I think as like a 20-year-old, even a kid in high school, thinking about what the possibilities are with AI, it would have blown my mind. But I still think that people and cinematographers, photographers need to have those basics covered of actually going out there and doing the real work ahead of time. That way, when you're able to go back into AI, you can say, I have the knowledge that I know I need to create the scene. Um, and that way you've done it both practically and you've done it digitally through the algorithm. And I think that it's important to have those real life, real world experiences before you dive into just the pure
Awesome.
digital experience.
Last question. What do you hope filmmakers will take away from your upcoming MZed course? Not just about the tools, but about your creative mindset.
Well, I think that the whole takeaway is that anybody can be ultra creative. Anyone can bring their thoughts to reality. And I think that when we harness AI in a manner that's positive, in a way that we use responsibly, it's going to really help a lot of filmmakers and photographers and cinematographers out there hopefully elevate their own craft. And that's really what it's about. It's about being able to go out there, be creative, come up with new avenues of ways to put beautiful content out there and to tell stories. And I think that if you do it responsibly, you can use traditional cinematography and photography alongside of AI to create these hybrid productions that will really just be incredible to watch and will help amplify the craft and help bring yourself into the new future, because this is the future. AI is here. AI isn't going anywhere. And the faster you get on board and understand it, you may not like it, but if you understand it, you'll position yourself in a way that you'll become more successful because of it.
Awesome. I'm really motivated to take the course and learn everything you know. And actually, now that we
Beautiful.
talk about it, we should do a certificate for people. Like if they finish the course, they get a certificate.
Absolutely.
It should
Yeah.
have its date on it though, because it's like that's like
It should have a date.
this is
Yeah.
for the month of August of 2025, whatever. Next month things are going to be different. There's a new certificate, but we can
Things
do
will
a
be different
certificate,
next
so
month.
if you
That's
need
right.
that. Yeah, good.
I
Well,
like that.
thank you so much for your time.
Beautiful.
I'm really excited to continue working with you on this and do all the marketing around this course, because I think a lot of people will be excited, and I can't wait to see what you come up with.
I'm excited as well. And as always, I appreciate the opportunity and thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for watching. Just tune in and give us a good rating also on all the podcasting platforms, of course, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to this, or if you watch it on YouTube, leave a comment. Email us at podcast@cined.com if you have any questions. Also got some questions for Drew. I can forward them. I'm sure he will be happy to reply to them. And yeah, just if you have any comments, just let us know. Any requests. We're here, and actually hear you next week on the CineD Focus Check podcast. Thanks, guys.